So let me welcome you all to the EGROW Friday webinar series. I'm very happy to say EGROW, which is a research-based policy think tank, very recent, October 31, 2018, we started. And we have been into the policy think tank space in India, in Delhi especially. We have been working with the government, with Niti Aayog, with UN Escape, with others in the country and some of them abroad. The basic aim of EGROW has been to provide research-based policy advice to the stakeholders. To that extent, we've been very fortunate. We were disrupted by COVID, and just as we were disrupted, we thought, let's start a webinar series wherein we bring in the best minds from across the world to talk about contemporary issues, both domestic and global. And we were very fortunate to achieve that blend. We have had speakers from across the world, some Indians working abroad, some people who are in other universities from different nationalities, experts in their own areas and coming to speak to us, and also Indians who have been working in India and are experts in those areas have spoken to us. We have had the privilege of 3 Nobel laureates come and speak to us under the same webinar series, one from Stanford, one from Harvard, and now at Chicago. We have also had a privilege to host a number of lectures under the G20 presidency, especially in new international economic order, and on women empowerment and on climate. Our series on women empowerment and climate will continue, whereas what we had thought initially 12 lectures on new international economic order were completed. As we pursue contemporary economic issues, we've started a new series where EGROW wanted to interact with scholars from our neighboring countries. We had the privilege of doing so last month on Russia. This month we are doing with China. Next month we are hosting on Nepal. And so we will be covering the neighboring countries. To chair this session, we invited none else but Ambassador Shyam Saran, who is the former Foreign Secretary of our country and has served as Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Nuclear Affairs and Climate Change. He is currently member of the Governing Council of the Institute of Chinese Studies and of the Center for Policy Research, a trustee at the World Wildlife Fund, president of India International Center, and member of the Executive Council of the Federation of Chambers of Commerce and Industry, FICCI. Most importantly, he brings with us the positive attitude. Whenever we have gone to him and said we want to host events at IIC where he chairs IIC, he has always given us the permission, joined us, guided us, and encouraged us. That's, I think, something exceedingly good with the ambassador who guides us all the time. He has headed the research and information system for developing countries, a prestigious think tank focusing on economic issues, and was chairman of the National Security Advisor Board under the National Security Council. He has recently published a book, How India Sees the World. He was awarded the Padma Bhushan, the third highest civilian award, in 2011 for his contributions to civil service. In May 2019, he was conferred the Spring Order Gold and Silver Star by the Emperor of Japan for promoting India-Japan relations. Today's topic being India and China, we have been very fortunate to have Dr. Yinghua. She was my postmate at Stanford. We were together in 2004, 6 months. We were together studying at Stanford. I was doing my postdoctorate and Yinghua was visiting the Stanford Center for International Development. Right now, she is a senior research fellow and professor in the Chinese Academy of Fiscal Sciences, Ministry of Finance, China. She serves as Director of Research Center on Macroeconomic Theory and Policy at the Chinese Academy of Fiscal Sciences. She is a council member of the Society of Public Finance of China, Vice Chairman of the Regional Finance Research Committee, Executive Director of National Budget and Accounting Research Association, member of the editorial board of the Blue Book of China's Fiscal Policy. Since 96, she devotes herself in the research on fiscal theory and policy for the Chinese Academy of Fiscal Sciences. Her main research areas are fiscal policy, macroeconomic, climate finance, public expenditure management. She has published several important papers, monographs, and books. She worked as a visiting researcher at Stanford during 2004 and 5 when I was there. She has participated in the 64th annual meeting of the International Institute of Finance, the 3rd and 6th Tokyo Fiscal Forum, annual economic consultations on China of AMRO. She visited Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Australia, New Zealand, US, UK, Netherlands, Cambodia, Pakistan, Thailand, and Japan for fiscal policy consultations and academic exchange. We are so fortunate that she agreed, took special permission to come and speak to us, and we want to thank you, Yinghua. Our next speaker for the day is Lieutenant General Dr. Rakesh Sharma. He was commissioned in Gorkha Rifles in 1977 and had a career spanning 40 years in the Indian Army. He has had extensive operational experience in Jammu and Kashmir, Northeast and on the Western borders. He has trained the Botswana Army for 3 years in Africa and attended the National War College at Abuja, Nigeria. General Rakesh Sharma attended the NDC in New Delhi. He was research fellow at Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis and has done PhD in Defense Studies. General Sharma commanded the Fire and Fury Corps in Ladakh, responsible for Kargil, Siachen Glacier and the eastern Ladakh, facing both Pakistan and China. He was the Adjutant General of the Indian Army responsible for the human resource management and superannuated in 2017. He has been awarded by the President of India. He is a regular participant in seminars, lectures in various institutions, and regularly writes for newspapers and military journals. He is currently Distinguished Fellow with the Vivekananda International Foundation and Center for Land Warfare Studies and on the Executive Council of Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis and of Global Terrorism Council. His recent article on China, extremely useful and very well written and conceived. With this, I hand over the session to Ambassador Shyam to conduct the proceedings further. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chandra Singh, and thank you for your very generous introduction. May I also welcome our two very distinguished speakers, our friend from China, Professor Yinghua, and General Rakesh Sharma ji. We are very grateful to EGROW for arranging this particular session, and I very much commend the initiative of having similar kind of interactions concerning India's other neighbors. But of course, China is perhaps the most important neighbor for India. And there is no doubt that over the last 40 years, China has been perhaps a remarkable growth story in, I would say, even in human history. I don't think that any country in history has had such a sustained high growth rate, and we see the results that China is today the second largest economy in the world. It is the world's largest trading power, and it is also a country which is perhaps emerging as a major creditor to the world, and it has been responsible for leading the creation of the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, the BRICS New Development Bank, where India is, of course, also a very major participant. But these are very substantial contributions that have been made by China in the economic side. Um, I recall, of course, as Foreign Secretary, we had the best period in India-China relations sometime around the period, 2003 to maybe 2007. Um, there was a very historic visit by the then Premier Wan Pao to India when I was Foreign Secretary. And amongst the important points of consensus that were reached during that visit, one very important element was the economic side. That India as an emerging economy was a great opportunity for China, and similarly, China as a very great emerging economy was a great opportunity for India, and therefore there was much merit in the two countries, expanding their cooperation in the economic side. And there is no doubt also that India-China economic relations then expanded quite rapidly, and perhaps had a very bright future, except for the fact that then politics has intervened. Politics has intervened in terms of a relationship which has, in a sense, gone sour after the unfortunate incidents at the India-China border in eastern Ladakh, in the Galwan area. While there have been several rounds of negotiations between the two sides in trying to resolve some of the issues, and some have been resolved, there are still two or three points where we have not been able to reach any agreement. And there are very large number of troops which are deployed on either side of the border. And even on the economic side, while it is true that despite these difficulties in our relations, our trade relations have in fact expanded quite significantly. They are over $100 billion. I understand that recently China has once again emerged as India's largest trading partner. So despite the political issues, the economic side has still been growing. But I can say that were the relationship better on the political side and the security side, the perhaps the economic relations would have been much larger. In a sense, today we are even talking about India and China being competitive on the economic side, because there is talk about China's economy slowing down, there being a move for China plus one, so that people are trying to diversify investments away from China. Perhaps India could be a competitive destination. These were issues that did not become very salient in the past. So it is a challenging situation that we are facing. Perhaps Professor Shi Yinghua can also tell us something about the current, economic situation with regard to China, because there are reports about a slowdown of the Chinese economy. There is a much more challenging situation on the trade side. Just recently, the United States has accused China of creating a lot of excess capacity, which will mean dumping in external markets. President Biden has once again raised tariffs on several Chinese goods, particularly 100% on electric vehicles. So even as far as the trading world is concerned, there is no doubt that there is a strong protectionist trend that we are seeing, emerging. So how does she see the future with regard to China's own economic interests? And there is of course also a sense that Chinese economy is quite resilient. It will overcome some of the problems which have arisen as a result of this protectionism that I'm talking about, as a result of the property crisis in China. And people expect that, China, having grown very rapidly for so many years, inevitably will now get into a phase of slower growth. Um, There is a focus on technology as one of the drivers of future growth. How successful has that been? So there are several questions which will be of interest to the Indian side. But without any further ado, let me invite Professor Shri Yinghua to make her presentation. You have the floor.
Okay. Thank you so much, and it's my pleasure to have this opportunity to attend the meeting and see all of you by internet. So we all say it's a cloudy meeting. Now I will try share my slide. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can.
Yes, because for a long time, and I haven't talked with Dr. Saran, and not familiar with English with the flavor of curry. So I will try to speak clearly, say something about the Chinese economy with my observation. I will say the growth momentum, resilience, potential, and the challenges. So generally, the Chinese economy have several features now. First one, I think it's during the period of economic recovery. So we see the sky effect hailing, and also the expectations of economy need to improve. And the second features, China is now during a period about the economic development model transition. And for a long time, maybe the external demand is a key driver, one of key drivers for growth, and also the real estate play a important role for economic growth. But now the external demand and real estate are not the key drivers for growth, and for the high quality development, there's a different story about the economic development. So it's a transition, and during the transition, I think there's how to say the policies and also what we judge the economy. I think it's different, but it's changing. And the third features, so the stage is changed. Now China is how to say is the post-industrialization stage, and another one is for the urbanization. I think the China is from the middle to the late stage of urbanization. So the development model and also the key point for the economic growth is changing. And the last one is just like the they say is external increasing uncertainty and complexity. There's a lot of factors for this. First one is accelerated adjustment of situation, and also it's how to say, it's a key period about the great power game and about the geopolitical conflicts, and also about the deep adjustment of global industrial chains. I think the logic about the global trade or the economy is changed, and we all know the relative advantage of the market rules is basic logic. So what we judge the trade or the economic action should be the efficiency or the cost. But there's the logic is changing to some extent. A lot of things about safety or the resilience. So this is also a lot rise a lot of uncertainty and complexity. And also the monetary policy is also another factors possible changes in monetary policy in the US or the European is another one. And also this year is also a election year. So there should be some policy changing in the future. So that's I think the China economy and I think this features should be the pre condition or the first of all I think should know. Yeah, this is the geopolitical risk index, and it's in now the index is relatively high level. Especially it's not the highest level since this century, but it's between the relatively high level. So I think from the index, we'll see the geopolitical risks is also higher, and also the external uncertainty is one factors for the policy making concerns. And for the Chinese economy, I think the first one, when we say it's a recovery stage, and the recovery shows the positive trend. For the fourth quarter of this year, GDP growth is about 5%, 5.3%, which is higher than the same period of last year, and also is higher than the last year. So it's a rapid growth, and also for the industrial industrial economy is also the good one. Since last year, I think all the industrial economy is performs have good performance. So the PMI also shows expansion range in March and April, and also the for the job or for the employment in the fourth quarter, more than 3 million new urban jobs created, which is higher than the same period of last year. So it shows also shows good economic recovery. And for the good import, is increased by more than 12%. This for the first quarter. So it means also the domestic demand is increasing. And all this, and from the consumer index is it's positive. It's positive. and also expectation of economic growth is improved. I have this one. And for the export in 2023, China's export account for 14.5% of the international market share, and China is also the largest exporting country. So from the picture, the right line is China, and the green line is US, and the blue one is Asian, and the green one is Mexico. So other factors or other trend for positive trend is as below. First one is the role of domestic demand initiatively becomes more prominent from the investment and also consumption. We can also see that, especially I want to say the consumption about the culture and tourism consumption continues active. And since the recently holiday is about May Day holiday. It's from the May 1st to May 5th. The domestic trips reached 295 million person time. It says person times, and they spend 166.89 billion yuan. It's only 5 days, and the domestic tourist increased by more than 28% compared 2019, and total travel expenses increased by 13.5% year to year. And also domestic demand initiatives becomes more prominent is because China's supersized domestic market. In the fourth quarter, domestic demand contribution rate is more than 85%. And for the contribution rate of total capital formation reaches 11.8%. For the household final consumption expenditure, the contribution rate reaches 73.7%. So the super large scale market and the strong growth potential, and I will give several numbers for this. And China has a population of 1.4 billion, and the per capita GDP has exceeded $12,000. So we can just divide two parts. First one is 400 million people, which we say is in the middle income group or the middle class market. And another one is 1 billion people. We call it sinking market. For the TikTok and also the Tamil, in Chinese, 拼多多, so all this logo and all this market is aimed at sinking market. So for this 10 for this 1 billion people. So it's also a huge market. And also for the new generation of consumer groups, which born in 1980s, there's nearly 700 million people. And this generation is usually the one child in China. So they have the different lifestyle, which is totally different from the parents. And also for the Generation Z, born in 1995 to 2009, is nearly 226 million. And if we divide people living in city and also living urban and also in rural areas, it's nearly the 6.5 million and plus 7.5 million people. For Chinese economy, I think there's a lot of advantages of growth. The long-term social stability, I think, which is a good basis for development, and also the significant scale effect. And I think I said just now. And another one is improved social infrastructure, especially such like the high speed rail and the high level road. For the high speed rail, the density is about 39.51 kilometers per 10,000 square kilometers in 2020. And all the social infrastructure provide a good basis for the social and economic development. Another advantage for China's economy is the industrial categories. There are complete industrial categories. Then there are strong industrial supporting capabilities and integration advantages. There are 666 industrial subcategories in China. It's nearly all industrial classification of UN. So this is, I think it's an advantage for economic development. And also, I think for China's economy, the momentum and the resilience is enhanced. One signal is China's innovation index ranks 12th globally. Another one is green industry, and which is which have comparative advantages globally. And also for the emerging industries with a higher growth rate. And also, I think the economic endogenous momentum is about we have the government implement the innovation-driven development strategy for middle to long term, and the modern industrial system is rapidly developed. And for the digital economy, which is a promising area and rise to more new growth points. And for the green and low carbon development, is have a promising future. Now, also the with the economic transition, I think the economic structure optimization. This is a share of manufacturing exports. The other lines with different color is about India, South Korea, China, Japan, Germany, United States, and the UN. The orange one is China share of manufacturing exports globally. So it's also one of the one of strong advantages, strong shares. For the with the economic transformation, the different industries have different growth rate. So we can see the industrial differentiation. We find the last 15 years, the different industries growth rate, and calculated last 5 years average growth rate. And the first two columns is labor intensive industries, which is in the past years have more competitive advantages. But now in last 5 years, average growth rate is 1.64%. For the resource intensive industries, which is in the middle 5 columns, have the average growth rate about 4.45%. For the emerging industry, which shares average growth rate about 9.5%, is nearly 10% growth rate. So in the picture, which is in Chinese characters, so from the right side, the 4 columns is the emerging industries. So from the picture, you can see it's the emerging industries have a higher growth rate, and it's more from color is more red, but the traditional labor intensive industries and the resource intensive industries average growth rate is lower than the emerging industries. And from January to April, the equipment manufacturing industries about design, designated size grows by 32.4%, account for 32% of the total industry. And the value-added ratio of high-tech manufacturing industry have a increase rate about 15%. And the production of new energy vehicles increased by 33.2% year-on-year. And for the production of solar cells increased by 18.2%. And we can also see the tax from manufacturing industries in the first quarter of this year. Our taxes from these industries grow rapidly. So it also say the positive trend. These two pictures is from the Global Innovation Index ranking. In the past 10 years, China, Turkey, India have become the fastest rising economy in the GII ranking. And in the left one, there's this one. This line is about China. Since 2019 and to 2021, the ranking is rising. And for the next one, there's all the developing economies with growth, with the increasing global innovation index, and the bigger one is India. This one is India, and for the unicorn companies, according the data from CB Insights, as of April 2024, there are 1,206 unicorn companies worldwide, and it's in 50 countries. And there are 5 countries owns 80% of the world's unicorns. And there's also the US is count for 54%, and China is 14%, India is 6%, and the valuation about the unicorns, China is $736 billion. So for this picture, it's in Chinese. This picture and the green one, green point, here is China and here's India. Also with because this is per capita GDP, and this is unicorn companies. So both the China and the India have good performance.
Professor Yinghua, I think conclude soon, because we won't have much time for the next speaker.
Sure, I will. I think I will finish quickly. And for the potential, I think the it's urbanization is it should have more potential, and also for the human capital, and for the opportunities. I think the we also have for the policy space. I think there are ample policy space, and also the for the technical revolution, and for the challenges in the future. I think there are 3 areas about it. First one is domestic circulation, smooth domestic circulation, and for the also for the domestic demand, how to formation cycle between the potential consumption and effective investment. I think this is very important. And also the external complexity and uncertainty is increasing, which is also the challenges in the future. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
Hope I see something. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Yinghua, for giving us a very comprehensive picture of the kind of dynamism that you say is still very much apparent in the Chinese economy. And despite some of the challenges that the economy is facing, from your presentation, it would appear that there are more positive elements rather than negative elements as far as China's economic prospects concerned. You have not really touched very much on the India-China relationship, but I think we can
Yes.
perhaps come to it at a later point. Thank you very much for your presentation. I now have great pleasure in inviting Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma ji to make his presentation on India-China relations. You have the floor, sir, and I hope you can perhaps conclude in about 20-25 minutes so that we have a few minutes left for us to be able to deal also with some question and answer. General Sharma, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Master Saran. Honored by being invited today. And I also thank Professor Charan Singh for being so persuasive and getting me on this important forum. I want to thank she for a very nice presentation. It gave a great insight into Chinese economy today. Now, my thrust is a little different. We all know India, we have learnt about China. My thrust is about authoritarianism, and I wish to delve on the issue largely on the weaponization of economies worldwide. Whether we are going to face a kind of authoritarian weaponization of economy in times to come as the world is facing today. And that is largely going to be my thrust of my talk, and which is also focus of my research here. Now, as we know, we have a international trade of about $770 billion in India, of which 118 is with China, another 118 with United States. So 30% of our trades rest with United States and China, and then substantial portion comes with the UAE and Saudi Arabia for the oil purposes. So the fact of the matter is that we are largely dependent on international trade in more manners than one, especially because that much of this trade actually comes up as a raw or as intermediate products that assists us in producing final goods which are to be exported outside, without which our economies won't sustain. So that is the basis of my talk out here. Now, if we see how world has been changing in the course of last a couple of years, maybe a decade and lesser than decade, there is this weaponization of economies, and it's been seriously been done. India has faced sanctions earlier, post the nuclear blast that we did in 99. But subsequently we have been watching the world as how it grows. In the course of last few years that we see, there is a clear attempt to communicate to a recipient nation a set of rewards and punishments by the nations who can afford to do so, who want to authoritatively want their will to be obeyed by the other nations, which is the recipient one. There is an attempt to shape the behavior by using economy as a weapon. And this is a significant tool that forces countries to take actions as per political and economic goals. This becomes an important part and parcel of the brinkmanship that's on across in the world, especially the great powers in persuasion of their rules. Now, if we see what the United States had done recently about tariffs to China, with 100% tariffs to EVs and 50% to semiconductors and 25% to, or we see the sanctions that were laid against Russia, in the course of the war with thing, and now they talk about moving the the foreign exchange reserves that the Russians had in Europe and elsewhere to be liquidated and used for the war in Ukraine itself, which is a great challenge. The money belongs to the people of Russia, but the thought is to encash their amounts and use it for this purpose. So the authoritarian conflict management is here to stay. And authoritarian conflict management also comes up from the fact that the international conflict resolution mechanisms are unable to perform their duties, whether they're economic in nature or of the warring kinds. That makes a thing extremely difficult for nations, aspirant nations like India, to grow and face the challenge here of the world. Now, I would say, and all this talk that we see now about overcapacity of China, especially in the green energy spheres, uh, which the United States has been talking about. And I thought capitalist world means that I produce the goods, I produce them cheap, I produce them in quality, and I'm able to have a market to supply it. That's the capitalist world. It's not a question of how much I produce it and whether I is overcapacity or under capacity. So if a country produces goods expensively and not able to sell it, so be it. But it cannot be used as an authoritarian a sword hanging on one's head as to on the behavior of a country. So that having been said, what is the change that is being brought about here, which is relevant here? There are adjustable rules which are being followed here. With due respect to ma'am having said so, one notices how the economic authoritarianism is being used by China. For example, in the course of last few years, there was this talk about Norway being banned for supply of salmon for 6 years because Norway gave a Nobel Prize to one of the dissidents. Or for that matter, South Korean Lotte malls were sealed off in China because South Korea went across for THAAD. Or the Australians recently, in the course of last 2 years, had the beef, barley, coal, and wines all blocked away by the Chinese authoritarianism for the attitude taken by Australians, especially in relations to COVID. And similarly, if you say there are many examples of Nike and H&M, and if Japan, when they had a trawler incident out here, or Philippines not buying plantains, that's bananas. So, there is, and similarly is true for the United States also, which takes on to similar kind of authoritarianism on issues of economy as weapons. This is a very serious issue that is happening out here. One of these issues that is translated here is that between many countries, China being the leader, China has withdrawn $400 billion from the US treasuries in the course of last 3 years. They had 1100 one time. They're now down to $775 billion in US, and steadily withdrawing it and converting into gold. India has also taken on to the same role of converting its foreign exchange reserves into gold. The fact of the matter is that the threat of economic authoritarianism is so strong in the world market now, the world here, that it causes immense amount of grief to nations which are developing, because at any one time you could be threatened with a denial of an item like the oil cap, which the Russians had to go through recently. Of course, we went across or the ban on semiconductor technologies. Of course, China has done excellent work on semiconductor technologies, not the best, but they are already into 5 nanometer chips. They are making mass producing 7 nanometer chips, and maybe in times to come they will come across to 3 nanometer chips. So there is an advancement out here. But there are many developing countries like India who needs the semiconductor chips and have to work to this end. And the threat of the ban of on items like on the semiconductor chips and all other industries is actually a Damocles sword on developing nations like India for reaching up to credible levels. So there is this issue of economic authoritarianism, which is a thing which stands in developing nations, and most of the nations are now facing this the issue in a substantial manner. Now that comes on to the issue of the brinkmanship that it brings about. Economy also brings about brinkmanship in many forms, where there is a the threat of that transcends across to testing of waters without actually resorting to actually violence. Now that becomes another aspect about development of economy. Like I would state here that the oil rigs that India has, which is produce oil in on the Vietnam, which we have contracted the ONGC Videsh Limited. Now, a number of times they get threatened by the Chinese, and last year also they got threatened by the Chinese uh, for blockade and for damage, or for sustenance of that of the oil ONGC Videsh Limited. So the fact is that there is a testing of waters on internationalization of Indian economy, which is actually causes immense amount of grief. Similarly, can be said about the what has happened, as Ambassador Shyam Saran has mentioned, brinkmanship of testing of waters on the line of actual control, or what is happening in Philippines, and what's happening across into many other areas. So the issue that I wish to highlight is that as time is passing, the countries of the world, without having a conflict resolution mechanism worth the name, whether it is in the manner of conflict resolution of the warring kinds or conflict resolution of the economy kinds, there is more and more authoritarianism being brought to fore that causes problems across to nations. In one fine day, Azerbaijan moved across to occupy the entire Nagorno-Karabakh on 19th of September. There was no challenge, there was no noise, there was no nothing done. The entire economy of Armenia, that is, which derived itself from Nagorno-Karabakh, was taken over by Azerbaijan. Of course, the problems are on for a very long time, but this was quietly in 24 hours. The whole country, the size of a large Indian state, was occupied by another country, and so be it, and nobody made a noise. So the fact is that there are issues here happening in the world, which are causing nations to be stretched beyond a level. Or what's happening in the Sahel region. Nobody talks about what's happening in the Sahel region, which is economically rich areas, where worldwide corporations are forcing wars to be fought from Mali to Somalia on to the other side, and in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is diamonds and oils and copper and manganese, all fighting for economic spoils. There are issues here about authoritarianism, which are causing, an index given out by Uppsala, which is a conflict management site, says that there are 30 countries at war today, existing today, out of the 193 that we talk about. This is a substantial number of countries in war at one time, and that's physical war. And I'm not even referring to economic wars, which are on at all the time. So the issue is that there is grief in the world on many a front. While we say that India is developing and we retain the rights to do whichever manner, but we are also at an state that we face this kind of issues out here. And the third issue I wish to raise is that there is the current ongoing the wars have caused uh, groupings to be formed, which did not exist today, which are also problematic. Now, India had tried hard for establishing of links across to the Middle East onwards to Europe and many other areas, and which were to be advantageous to our Indian economy. But what has happened in the course of last 6 8 months, there are, and of course the Ukraine war, that there are groupings being formed, which are, for example, between the no limits partnership between Russia and China, and also Iran thereafter. So the hopes into Middle East and onwards towards Europe, and IMEC, and the Abraham Accords, and all the other issues that we're banking on in matters of trade, are now getting into problematic situations. So there is the the ongoing wars are causing even more grief into many nations. Of course, we have many other been advantaged by the war, especially the corporations in United States, which are churning out weapons, which are taking advantage of it. But then that's a portion of the economy. But fact of the matter is that this authoritarianism is causing immense amount of problems across here. I would say that we in India, which are a developing nation, we have a steady growth of our economies, 7% as somebody was pointing out today, or of a 3.75 trillion dollars economy today. But the fact is the Chinese have got $18 trillion economy and they go at 5%, which is substantial growth in any manner. We have to plan in a manner that we actually just cannot. In fact, de-risking is also a difficult proposition for us, but we have to plan in a manner that we work to this, and it should not happen as what the Germans are feeling today, that they don't even have antibiotics in their market to supply to the people because of the problems that they have with China, because most of the medicines were supplied by the Chinese, or what the French felt in the course of last 4 months on brandy, which is 90% exported across to China, which was being stopped now, of course, in the recent visit of President Xi to France. This brandy thing has been stopped out. But these are issues of major trade and major issues out here. So India has to, we talk about Atmanirbhar, of self-reliance of a type that we know which is essential to us. But having said that, it is also important for us to make sure that we protect ourselves in the growth path that we have decided ourselves, that we do not fall into this bracket of economic authoritarianism and, of course, the conflict authoritarianism, which is also rampant across here. And in that matter, our thrust that we say has to come across in getting as self-reliant as possible in many ways, which is possible. Now, it's very difficult to get out of the green energy issues, because we require the solar panels, we require the batteries, we require the solar cells, and there are many issues that which are essential for us, for our economy to rise. But there are significant other ways that we can protect ourselves from the authoritarianism of the future, and this may or may not emanate from what's happening on the line of actual control. And I'll take a step here on the line of actual control. What in any discussion of China, and as our external affairs minister has been repeatedly saying, situation is abnormal in matters of relationship, economic relationship with India and China. The primacy of the issues of the primacy of the issues of the line of actual control and territorial issues, which are called as sovereign issues by the Chinese now, cannot be obliterated and cannot be brushed aside, because what has transpired in last 4 years is very significant. Not only what happened in Galwan, but subsequently the forces arrayed on both sides of the border are such substantial in number that they cause pressures on the Indian economy and on Indian people, and this is become a kind of threatened being. I won't say that there is a territorial threat of a war with China. No, it's not the likelihood, and it's not on the horizon. But it puts the Indian nation under tremendous amount of geopolitical and geostrategic pressure to retain the kind of forces that we have arrayed across on the line of actual control, and that is not going to go away. This much escalated deployments that we have now inherited in 2024 are going to remain for a very long time to come. Therefore, to say that we will not face any economic authoritarianism which rests, and it's not because of territory alone. No country can take Arunachal Pradesh from us in this century. But having said that, it is also important that there is the issue of geopolitical pressure that can be brought on India because of the issues on the border, and there that presents itself into the geo-economic authoritarianism. So India has to be cautious and grow in that manner. We naturally deserve, demand and request better relationship with China, which is our very important neighbor with a very large border. But having said that, there are trends in the world and drivers in the world of authoritarianism which cannot be forgotten and cannot be pushed aside, because they are ongoing every day. Every single day, there are issues being raised of economic authoritarianism, and we have to be mindful of that fact here. I'll rest here, sir. I'll take on the question subsequently, sir.
You very much, General, for your very interesting, presentation. Um, I would only like to comment that you are perhaps using authoritarianism in a somewhat different context rather than the usual ideological context in which it is used, because I think essentially we talk about democracies as being different from authoritarian states, but you have sort of widened the description of authoritarianism, because um, it would appear to me that we have always had the use of economic uh, factors as geopolitical instruments. I mean, this is of very long. It has had a very long history. I think what is different today, to my mind, is the fact that it has perhaps acquired a scale and a scope that we have not seen for a long time. And therefore it has a salience which needs to be addressed, as you have pointed out. India has, as you have stated, faced a range of sanctions from the United States on the nuclear issue, for example, or on high technology. Relationship, of course, has undergone a change, so therefore the situation is better in this regard. But you would have seen reports that because India has gone ahead with the Chabahar port, the US is threatening sanctions again against India. So I think the use of economic instruments for geopolitical ends or foreign policy ends is something that is quite salient and has been for a long time. But there is, as you have said, an expansion in that respect. And that, of course, applies to India-China relations as well. I would only like to point out, in all fairness, that India has also taken certain, economic measures against Chinese companies. So it's not just a one-way thing, and it would not be a one-way thing if there is a threatening posture adopted by China or any other country. I think India will respond to it in the manner that it can. This is a very interesting presentation. I think what you have said as the solution to this is that we have to perhaps move further in the direction of self-reliance. But I have a problem with that, because I do not want that we go back, to the license and permit Raj kind of a situation. I think I still believe that the more open India's economy is, the greater the prospects for its development. And navigating that, of course, is a challenging task, but I think we have so far managed not too badly. And as our economic power itself increases, I mean, we are the fifth largest economy in the world today. We are likely to become number three in the none too distant future. And that gives us a degree of leverage that not many other countries have. So that is a plus point in terms of going forward. Thank you once again, General Sharma, for a very interesting presentation. I would like to ask Professor Yinghua if she would like to make any follow-up comments, maybe 2 to 3 minutes in response to what General Sharma has just presented. Professor Shir?
Yes.
Would you like to make a few follow-on comments on the presentation which has been made by General Sharma, or shall we just go straight into the question and answer sessions?
I think it's very how to say interesting speech and also have a lot of important perspectives about the Chinese and India economic relations. I think that we share the more close relationship between the international trade and as I remember, China should be the biggest trade partner. So I think there's a lot of topics we can discuss together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I will not press you any further. But perhaps Dr. Charan Singh, would you like to? We have about 15 minutes or so left. Would you like to perhaps take over the question and answer session, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. And I'm sure towards the end, we'll have the advantage of listening to you, Ambassador Sir. Now, let me come here. I just have been amazed with the China growth story and the way China has expanded. So one question I had was, how is China planning to take care of the slowdown that is hitting China now? China has always been growing at 10% and above, or around 10%. But now with the what happened in the real estate and the slowdown, how's China trying to tackle it? If there are any thoughts you can share with us. In general, I also had a thought with you. I think the point that you have said is a very well taken point, weaponization of the nation, and you weaponize the growth also of the nation. You know that you are the only one, and therefore to rub you on the wrong side can become a problem. So I was thinking, and how would you be thinking in terms of, would you say that the multipolar world is already here, or the bipolar world is already here, and this could soon become a multipolar world? And that probably would be the only way to save us from this solution. Otherwise, this is too much of a monopoly power two countries have. I don't know what is the way forward. So I'm asking you if you would know what's the way forward. And I'm happy to take more questions. If anybody has a question, please raise your hand. You can
Yes,
put it in the chat box. Yes, my colleague, Dr. Vishendas is founder director with us at EGROW. Yes, Dr. Vishendas.
yes. First of all, I congratulate all the three panelists, including the chair and Professor Charan, Professor and foreign secretary and our lieutenant general and everybody is so rich in content. I'm tempted to say that economy is the power, that currency of the economy is a power and which can be used for non-economic purposes also. Having said that, to me it appears that China is using its economic prowess as an instrument for arm twisting to many other countries, and to some extent it tries to do with India, its neighboring country, and how it will have impact on its can this kind of approach of China be sustainable? That is my worry. And second is, to what extent the China's population policy, one child, then relax, and how it will have is the youthfulness, the population, the dividend, and then the population structure on its long-term economic interest.
Yeah, there is a question from Dheeraj Dadich. I think we can collect all the questions, and then afterward, collecting all the questions, then the two speakers can decide. So Dheeraj?
Hello.
Yeah,
I hope I am audible.
yes, you
My
are.
question is, as India is China is the largest trading partner of India. If China manufactures almost everything, in lieu of the trade with US, we have seen that they have taken up the debt of the United States. So when we are trading with China, what are we going to give back? Because there should be some sort of a thing if reliance on the US dollar comes down with people just buying up gold. So what do you think is going to happen with balance of payments with China? If that question makes any sense, I'm not sure. Thank you.
So this question is directed towards Yinghua, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Any other
Yes.
question? Anybody else has a question? Yeah, I think you could go ahead. I don't see any hands raised. So yeah, you could
Mhm.
go ahead.
Okay. I think you just raised the question about the how to say the economic quality and also the speed. I think now for China, I think it's most important to pay more attention to quality rather than speed, because China has experienced more than 30 years about the investment rapid growth period. So all the social infrastructure is relatively completed, and also for the how to say the uh, uh, the efficiency about the investment is lower than before. Most important is the key driver of the growth from the investment to the consumption. Uh, so uh, so the how to say the so which is we can see the rate growth rate is uh, how to say that it's drop down, but we all see it's good for the future. It's when you see the aging situation and also the how to say uh, we should pay more attention to the public services or the with the aging problem. So the so how to say the match between all the elements and also the elements and the policy is more important. So I think the pay more attention to the quality is useful for the future development. Yes. And another question. Uh, I didn't remember. There's a question about the population about China.
Yes, yes.
I,
China's population policy, they first had the one-child policy. I thought that
mm,
became very disruptive. And then they went out and liberalized the child policy. Now, is that
mm,
disruptive? You have, of course, mentioned about aging, but with this one-child policy and now to the more than one-child policy, what
mhm.
is the thought behind that?
Yeah, there's some change, but it's not a lot. Cause in the city, in the urban areas, and a lot of people think it's a high cost for raising a child. I think a lot of people only have one child or the two child. So now it's permitted to how to say, stimulate the family have more child, but it's not easy because think for the young parents, they think it's important to have how to say costly uh, raising child. It's costly. So they don't want to have more more children. Yeah.
It's like the
So the
Western model. It's the Western
mhm.
model of the economic model of having a child.
Yeah, I think it's it's similar for the developed countries. Yeah, especially in the eastern regions. So people don't think there's more than 3 children. Yeah.
Dheeraj, I have also forgotten your question. What was your question?
So it was basically that when China traded with US, they took on the debt of the US in lieu of the goods that they were selling.
Right.
China is now the biggest trade partner of India, and China almost manufacture almost everything that they have, and sometimes take the raw materials from outside world. So when we trade with China, if, over the period of time, as was pointed out in a presentation, that India is converting foreign exchange into gold, and China is also converting it into gold. So we don't so how is the balance of payment thing is going to turn out, or trade balance is going to work out, or what is China going to take in lieu of the goods that they are supplying to India in future?
Do you have an answer for that question?
Yes, I think it's more than my research areas. And I
No.
think that it's a problem about the how the renminbi in internationalized is that one. I think it's important to use more RMB in worldwide, and the People's Bank of PBC is trying to carry out the reforms about the how to say RMB international reforms, but I can only see that. Yeah.
I think for that question, we will have to have somebody from the foreign exchange department from China. And after you left Stanford, somebody came from there to Stanford, and I think I'll request them if they can come on in a month or two and answer that question, Dheeraj. If you have foreign exchange in mind.
May I make a comment, Mr. Dr. Charan Singh?
Yeah, sure.
On this question of the internationalization of the currency. The bottom line today is that there is no alternative to the US dollar as a international currency. So if you look at the foreign exchange transactions across the world on a daily basis, more than 86 to 87% of those transactions involve the US dollar as the one currency against whichever exchange is taking place. So that is a scale which no other country has. And even if you look at, for example, foreign exchange reserves of various countries, even though Chinese currency has been introduced into the reserve currencies of the IMF, the basket of currencies that the IMF has, the fact is that only about 3% or 3.5% of foreign exchange reserves of various countries are held in the Chinese currency. More than 60% is still held in US dollars. The problem with the internationalization of the yuan is today that it is still not a fully convertible currency. It is convertible on the trade account, on the current account, but it is not fully convertible on the capital account. And that's a very important aspect. Now, what China has been trying to do is, of course, to number one, promote the use of regional currencies. That is, in trade settlement between China's, for example, and its trade partner, it has been promoting the use of regional currencies. Secondly, very important experiment which is taking place is the digitization of foreign exchange transactions between countries, cross-border payments. So there is this M-Bridge project which is being currently undertaken by China, by Thailand, also the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, and the UAE, which are looking at central bank, digital currencies, which all these countries have introduced, to be used digitally for cross-border transactions. This way, don't need to have an intermediate currency at all. Now, this is at an experimental stage, but this is one of the ways in which China is trying to see how the reliance on the US dollar can be reduced. So even though there may be some effort on the part of China to divest from US Treasury securities and to perhaps buy more gold. Also, as you said, India is also trying to deal with possible volatility in the market by also raising the proportion of gold in its in its reserves. But bottom line is that the international financial market today is as dollar based as it was sometime. Thank you.
That's true. That's true. Numerous studies published at IMF. Are there alternatives? No. And I think during COVID and the Russia-Ukraine war, attempts was made to save the rupee, ruble will replace and things like that. But again, I think the dominance of the US dollar continues. General,
Hello, I can
yeah.
ask a question. Am I
Who's
audible?
this?
May I?
From
Yeah,
Canada.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Professor Kurian. And
Uh,
yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you for your organization of this very useful webinar. On trade issue, I like to raise two questions. One, we empirically know that the trade deficit between China and India that is consistently widening. And if that is the case, how we are going to maintain the sustainable economic relations between India and China? That is question number one. Question number two is one of the recent one. That is, we know that after the war, the American NATO, they have raised the sanctions. And now I understand that America is going to extend the sanctions not only to Russia, but to all those countries which are going to have trade relations with Russia. And India, we know that we are one of the beneficiaries of oil trade. So how we are going to tackle this very complex issue? These are my two simple questions. Again, I think a lot of interesting things have been developed, but there is very little time for examining all this. Anyway, I thank the organizers and also I thank for listening to my questions. Thank you very much.
General, I think over to you.
Thank you, sir. Now, I'd say quickly, many of these issues have been raised. One is that Chinese is slowing economy. It is rightly pointed out, but then there is an ideological makeover of Chinese economy in the course of last 10 years. And that ideological makeover has actually helped out, brought the economy down to 5% because it has become more of the centricity of the communism which comes into this whole thing. And, there was talk about Japanification of Chinese economy. There is a limit up to which infrastructure can propel a nation. Chinese infrastructure has already reached a level where they had to get out of infrastructure and get into other parts of the economy which will develop slowly. And I think that changeover which came to now, green technology and green economy, is taking over in time. So presently, of course, they're down to 5% because of the loss of infrastructure as a basis of the economy. But that basis changing over to green economy, and BYD now going to Hungary and to Mexico and to Latin America, BYD India, there would be changes happening on Chinese economy of a different kind as time is passing. Second issue, sir, about multipolarity, and I think it's a very interesting question. We also talk multipolarity. There will be multipolarity in time with the bipolarity which stands across here, because the two economies are also developing. The Chinese economy, even at 5.5%, will be growing at about $1 trillion a year, or a little short of $1 trillion. So while Indian economy, even if it grows at 8%, 7%, 8%, we won't be, we are only rising by what, 300 or 400. While the other part of the story is the Chinese are rising in by $1 trillion. See, the drop into performance also is significantly very large, even if the economy goes by 5%. So to say that there is multipolarity, yes, we look forward to multipolarity, but there will be bipolarity that will stand for a very long time, which is the Chinese and the Americans. Third issue we wish to raise about populations, a very interesting question. They say by 2075, Chinese will be down to 100 billion. 100 billion is also 2075 is 3 times the population of United States today. And also, while there may be an old age issue happening, but it doesn't mean that everybody is becoming old in no time in China. There will be substantial for next 20, 30 years. They would have sustenance in the youth to propel the economy as much as possible. And the Chinese investment into many other countries which are also manufacturing goods which for which basic products come from China or they're assembled in China, for example, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Bangladesh. These are Chinese industry, Chinese owned industry, even in Nepal. The Chinese or Chinese owned industry which is making finished products here or making intermediate products into many other countries. Finally, it is all supply chains, and the supply chains are vicious circle. So the Chinese own population may be going down, but the industry is not going down, having been established across into many other parts of the world. There is the issue of trade deficit in India and China. So this is a thing exists. We have worked to this end. There are news items saying that we have worked on the solar panels somewhat because solar panels everything, but we want non-renewable energy sources, and we need to buy from China for quite some time to come. The Americans also, and so do, but and it's cost effective to purchase it from them. So while it is advantageous for us to purchase from China at a time when the nation is growing and needs to grow, because anywhere else it becomes cost prohibitive to purchase many of these things. But it is for us to be mindful of the fact. Now, can we enhance our exports to China? The Chinese are mindful of what they wish to purchase. They have a long-term philosophy. They are mindful of what they purchase from which country, which part of the world. The entire world logistics now is owned by the Chinese. So if it is a port in Greece called Piraeus, the stuff that comes to that port, which is now semi-owned by Chinese, comes from whichever country in European continent. The Chinese know what stuff is being moved, which how is it being brought in by logistics, how is it being transported, which country is buying what, how is the stuff being transported to which country. So they have the data for this one, and they have got 100 odd ports of this kind, including the port of Los Angeles, the port of Miami. So the Chinese control on logistics industry worldwide is tremendous, including the data that they're generating of all trade that's happening across there. So it's not thing. Master Saran has rightly pointed about of the importance of dollar for a long time to come. Chinese started a replacement of SWIFT called SIPS, I think it was called CIPS. They started a CIPS, which was some kind of an attempt to replace it. Some countries adopted it, Southeast Asia, Russia, even some Middle East countries said, okay, we will take on some trade instead of SWIFT, which takes on 111 million transactions every minute. SIPS will start building up, but SIPS has not taken over. Russians also started a replacement to SWIFT, but the thing is not taken off. So the fact is that the dollar strength is going to remain. The conversion to gold is largely, if Chinese had $1,100 billion in US Treasury in 2021, and they have only 775. So they are withdrawing in the first quarter of this year itself. The Chinese withdrew $53 billion from the American Treasury, and they are converting all that they are withdrawing from the Treasury into gold. It doesn't affect that much of a balance of payment between India and China in that manner, sir. And of course, of the sanctions extension, I think, sir, the sanctions are important, but some things have been proven in this course of last years of war, that the sanctions are circumventable. There are always methods to get around the sanctions. Chinese have fantastic methods. Chinese have a law called anti-sanction law, or something it is called. How they get around to avoid the sanctions that the Chinese get into. And also look at how the Russians have got out of the Iranians in so much of sanctions, the North Koreans with so much of sanctions. But the fact of the matter is, Now the countries understand that sanctions will affect, but there will be methodology to circumvent the sanctions and get out of it. And that's what we have to plan. Tomorrow, if we get into a regime where we are also on the receiving end, well, so be it. And I agree with Ambassador Saran. The Americans did make a noise about Chabahar. I think we are a nation now to reckon with nearly $4 trillion economy and a large population and a strength to look into the eyes and speak. We shouldn't bother about a statement made by a White House spokesperson saying, we will see you about Chabahar. See us in which way you want to see us. We have the resilience to look into the eyes and stand with whatever we want to do. Professor Charan Singh?
Yeah. Sir,
I think we'll have to conclude quickly, Professor Charan Singh. We are already 10 minutes above, beyond 5:30.
absolutely, sir. Once you make your concluding observations, I'll make some administrative announcements and we are ready to close.
No, I think we have had a very rich discussion, and I think we have also had a very stimulating question and answer session. I would only like to express my thanks to Professor Yinghua for not only making a very, very comprehensive presentation, but also patiently answering some of the issues that were raised in the question and answer session. And similarly, Lieutenant General Sharma, thank you very much again for your excellent presentation and also for very patiently answering the various questions which were raised. Professor Charan Singh, thanks to you for organizing this very interesting interaction, and I'm really looking forward to many more such interactions in the future. So with those words, let me turn the mic to Professor Charan Singh for some concluding comments he would like to make. Thank you.
Sir, I would like to thank you for chairing it. You bring so much of richness of your experience, and the spectrum that you have is so wide. We always feel like falling back on you whenever we think this is an important area, and you can help us. And I really want to thank you for accepting our request and at such a short notice. Same thing I would like to mention, sir. We are on 29th of May and 31st of May, we are doing at India International Center, again courtesy of the Ambassador Sharan, we are doing jointly with IIC a half-day workshop each on India looking forward. And we have very limited seats. It's a workshop only by invite. I would request if any one of you is interested, please write to us immediately. It's only by invite and very limited seats. I want to thank now my old friend and colleague. We were together at Stanford. We have connected today after nearly 21 years. I'm so impressed with the type of presentation that you have made. I remember at Stanford, we used to be discussing these issues. And after 2 decades, we have started talking about it again. So I want to thank you. I know you had to take special permission to be with us, and you did that just to be with us. So I want to thank you from the core of my heart, and I hope you will be able to join us again in future. Similarly, General Sharma, I like the piece that you wrote. We will be sending a link. Some people have asked for it. I'll be sending the link to them. I think that paper was brilliant. And I also think your presentation today and your discussion is very, very good. And of course, former foreign secretary of our country is here, and he has heard you throughout the polar and the multipolar world and the weaponization of the economies. All those are very, very important issues. How countries play that role and how countries have played that role even in the past, and how it's been centuries that that role is being played. India's Green Revolution actually comes from that weaponization when we did not even have food and the food was not coming on our way because we did not vote in the pattern we were expected to do. And PL 480 turned out almost against us. So I really thank you for flagging that issue and bringing it out so well. 2 administrative announcements. One, almost every day except Saturday, Sunday, EGROW Foundation has classes from 7:30 to 8:30. And these are very nominally priced. And if somebody can't even afford that, we waive that fee. It's on important topics. It's more pedagogic, more academic. We cover issues like macroeconomics, financial markets, technical issues. Please spread the word. The speakers and the teachers are the best in the country. Something like professors from IIM, retired chief economist of some leading institution. Those are the type of people who come and speak on those lectures. So please spread the word. Next Friday, we have a very important talk again. It is by Karthik Muralidharan. He is speaking to us on Indian economy. He has written a book, Karthik Muralidharan, and he is basically going to speak to us about his book. So I'm going to request you all, same time. Karthik is in California. Maybe we'll have to change the time. So it'll be most probably 6 to 7:30 or so. I'm going to request each one of you to make a provision for it. And please join us for that discussion on Karthik's recent book. With that, let me once again conclude Ambassador Sharan to have chaired the session, the two speakers for having agreed, and the participants to be here with us today and enriching the discussion. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
This recording of today
Thank you.
will be on our website tomorrow. You're welcome to use that the way you want. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.